can keep the cameras off. And there is a message there, just to let you know. So quick intro, my name's Akeem. I've been involved in Peabody's youth programs for the last year and a bit. Last year I sat on the youth panel that was a part of the deciding factor for the Young People's Fund, and I'm also sitting on one this year as well. So the purpose of tonight's event is to introduce you to the Young People's Fund, what we hope to achieve, what we aim to fund, and how you can apply. There also will be an opportunity for you to ask any questions you might have as well. So going down onto the agenda, there'll be a quick introduction to Peabody, introduction to the fund and the public's participation framework. You'll hear a bit about my experience on the youth panel and my work with Peabody. And we also hear directly from Soapbox, their experience with youth-led work, and also the application and the decision-making process. And to end, we'll have a Q&A session where you'll be able to have all your answers, all your questions answered. I'm now going to hand over to Sabrina to introduce Peabody and the Young People's Fund.
And then we have Faith on hand as one of our IT gurus who will be doing the screen sharing for us. Also too, on a note, if anybody has any IT issues, if you just message Natasha, she'll be able to kind of help out with those. One other note too is the Q&A section won't be recorded. So we do want to make sure everybody feels comfortable to ask any and all questions. So just one quick note on that. Faith, can you click to the next slide? And then the next one. So I'm from Peabody. Peabody is one of the largest and oldest housing providers in the UK. Our first estate was opened 157 years ago, and we currently have about 66,000 homes and 133,000 residents in 29 London boroughs and about 8,000 care and support customers in the Southeast. We're likely to expand even further next year, as there's currently plans to incorporate Catalyst, another housing association, into Peabody next year. Next slide, please. So Sarah, Natasha, Faith, and I all work as part of the Peabody Community Foundation. It was formed in 2016, and basically it's what it sounds like. We do a lot of the community work for Peabody. Our vision is to help build communities that are healthier, wealthier, and happier. Our work is centered around a place-based approach focused on issues facing communities, with services delivered in a sustainable way that builds resilience and independence. It has 4 components, the first of which is direct delivery, where we provide services directly to residents where there's a gap in provision and we're best placed to fill it. We certainly don't think we're experts in every single field. So we tend to try and be quite selective on where we do direct delivery. The second component is indirect delivery, where services are delivered in partnership via other organizations. We do have quite a lot of partners and we're working on expanding our partners. Our grants program falls within this category, as it also falls within the next category of community mobilization. Community mobilization works to help people help themselves through volunteering, access to grants, and capacity building. The fourth component of our approach is influencer, where we publish research and draw out policy implications. Our customers are key to our work, as we believe people have the power to create positive changes in their lives, communities, and society. Faith, the next slide. We know that communication and aligned approaches is essential to addressing violence affecting young people. The Housing Association Youth Network, AIN, are focused on 7 boroughs most affected by violence affecting young people. We have identified stock partners in areas with high incidence of violence and are working together with other key partners to take an aligned approach. Alongside this, we have developed Peabody's response to youth affecting young people. We looked at the system and where funding is being allocated. We identified a gap for projects designed and delivered with young people. Within Peabody, we know that young people understand their experiences and the varied factors that result in violence. We also know that they have the ability to design solutions. We have therefore put this at the heart of our response. A couple of examples of our work outside of this fund are the Burning the Village podcast. It was written, produced, and acted by young people based on their lived experiences. The aim of this podcast is to raise awareness of young lenders' perspectives on the root causes of violence in their city and to influence decision makers. To achieve this aim, the team included an audio play and interviews with Nikki Aiken, Neil Coyle, and Leroy Logan, who are MPs, and with Leroy being a former Met police superintendent and chair of the Black Police Association. We've also worked with a group of young people in Lambeth to explore their experiences, map the system, identify challenges, and design solutions. This resulted in the development of 5 trial projects, including training, creating a safe, empowering private place where young people can engage and benefit from the diverse range of services. This group has now secured an additional £10,000 as a result of their work to develop an accessible and appealing community space. Next slide. So the reason why we all are here is the Young People's Fund. So the Peabody Community Foundation created the fund in 2019. It was in response to an unprecedented rise in crime affecting young people that had been concentrated in a central corridor of boroughs. We have chosen 5 priority boroughs: Hackney, Lambeth, Waltham Forest, Westminster, and Southwark for the fund. These 5 boroughs have the highest combination of violence affecting young people and housing stock. This selection is kind of aimed at ensuring that we utilize the funding to support our young residents who are most impacted by violence. Also, I've just seen a quick question pop up. Will you send us a slideshow? Yep, we'll send that through. LCF is also going to post the slides, a summary of any questions and answers, and the recording to their website. So that way, if you have a colleague who wasn't able to make it, we'll be able to join, or we'll be able to see the session. And one other question, can you repeat the boroughs? So the boroughs are Hackney, Lambeth, Waltham Forest, Westminster, and Southwark. These boroughs are also listed in the application guidance. So we've selected these because obviously as a Peabody Community Fund, we have a responsibility to make sure that we're benefiting our residents. So it was important that any borough we selected had a high number of Peabody stock. And then also too, we don't want to issue funding where it's not really needed. So we also want to make sure that there are high rates of violence, so that way our fund can kind of deliver maximum impact where it's really needed. With the Young People's Fund and other funds, LCF, we haven't introduced, sorry, I've been asked to talk slower. So LCF is our partner organization, the London Community Foundation. I'm sure most of you have heard of them. They are administering this fund with Peabody. Both LCF and Peabody are committed to being good funders. So what this means in practice is you can expect clear communication from us and open dialogue when questions or issues arise. It's very important to us that you do feel comfortable to kind of ask questions either at the design stage or as things are progressing. You can also expect proportional reporting and application requirements. We're cognizant that this isn't, you know, a £500,000 fund, so we wouldn't ask reporting or applications that are excessive. And then lastly, there's a focus on the work being supported. This is the second year of the fund, and with each round, we will further develop the fund so we make it better in light of lessons learned. One of the main changes impacting this round is we are placing a greater emphasis on projects that actively involve young people in the design and implementation, as opposed to only consulting with young people. This is because young people are at the heart of the fund, and while we were able to fund 8 projects that we were really excited about, we were hoping to receive a higher number of applications that meaningfully engaged young people in the design application last year. So we just wanted to be a lot more explicit, provide a bit more guidance, and then make sure we're kind of being true to the ethos of the fund. Faith, next slide. So to kind of facilitate this change, we are using the public participation framework to gauge youth involvement The framework is designed to assist with identifying the level of participation that the public play in a process. The spectrum of use internationally is found in many public and voluntary sector plans. The reason why we're using this is we want to give all groups a clear guide as to what we're looking for and a way to articulate young people's involvement that is consistent across different applications. Applications that fall into the involve, collaborate, and empower stages will be prioritized over applications that fall into the consult stage. Applications that fall into the inform stage will not be considered. The reason being, again, is it's really important to us for the fund that young people, the youth voice is really at the center of everything. Akeem is on our decision-making panel this year, and we have a young panel of young people making the decision this year again. And back to Akeem.
Thank you, Sabrina. So I'm next on the agenda, and I'm going to be talking about my experience on the panel and my participation in all of the other programs I've been involved in the last year. So my relationship with the panel began in February 2020, so right before the pandemic. And how I found out about the youth panel was basically I went on LinkedIn and I saw a post about getting involved on youth panel, and I'm someone who's been quite interested in youth engagement and community engagement and how to basically kind of decrease the problems that youth currently face, and reached out to Peabody, and I was sent over an application to complete. Had a really informal interview, talked about my experiences, my passions, why I felt like this would benefit me, why I felt like my kind of views should have been heard. And from there, I was accepted onto the youth panel. The next stage was then meeting the other youth panelists, and we got a chance to come to Peabody's offices, and we met up with LCF, and we had a training session on, I suppose, how to make I suppose, accurate and concise decisions with regards to the grants. So we were originally planned to make the decisions in July, but because of the pandemic, it got pushed back to August. And it was, when it did get pushed back to August, it was a whole day, and we met organizations from all over London, and myself and a few of my colleagues, we obviously made a decision. And one of the key things we were looking for was, youth-led decisions, and it had to be very relatable to our own experiences, to how, things we experienced, things we'd seen. And when kind of posing those questions out to these organizations, it was always about the suitability of, a young person using it. Would a young person really, go to that youth club? And again, what was the context of it? So if they were asking for funding, the context last year was very much in the pandemic as well. So would you be able to utilize these services throughout the pandemic? So it was very much thinking like that as well. So once the panel ended and the funds were awarded, one of the key skills I think I developed, one was kind of like stakeholder management piece, working alongside Peabody, communicating alongside my peers on the panel. Further on from there, I was then invited to join the Peabody Young Advisors Program, and it was around 3-4 months program, and it was a chance for young advisors who were interested in community engagement to, one, learn new skills, learn any kind of skill actually that would help them within their kind of career development, and two, learn a lot about human-centered design. Through there, we spoke about, we were given a project on how to increase youth engagement with Peabody, and we concluded with key recommendations, which are now being taken on by Peabody, which is super excited to know that, youth voice actually matters, and that youth voices and recommendations are actually implemented. So that's kind of a short kind of story of how my involvement has been with Peabody. So thank you for taking time to hear my story. I look forward to answering any questions during the Q&A. And I'm now going to pass it over to Soapbox to talk about their experiences from a partner's perspective.
Hi everybody. Whilst I'm doing this, meet Pickle. Pickle was supposed to become the youth centre dog, and then he had a week of that, and then the world went mad. So there you go, just a cute puppy for everybody to look at whilst I'm trying to sort out the technical aspects of this. Please accept the fact that any technical issues here are entirely to do with him, not to do with me. So there you go. So very briefly, there's two of us going to be talking today, myself and Jordan. Say hi, Jordan.
Hello, everyone. Nice to see you.
There you go. And just to say, very subtly, when everyone's kind of showcasing how much reading they've done, I've got a VR headset there, just very subtly placed. So who is Soapbox and Live Futures? We're a partnership between a charity called Covent Garden Dragon Hall Trust and Live Futures, who are a social enterprise. And this is about the work that Soapbox and Live Futures have done over this period, supported by Peabody. Soapbox is an open access youth centre on Old Street in Islington. We provide access to digital media and technology for socially excluded young people. These are young people who are systemically and systematically denied the same opportunities as their peers. Young people who learn disabled, from minority ethnic groups, young women, part of the care system, etc. It's been described, we were very excited because The Guardian described our work as 21st century youth work this year, and we were also an inspiring pioneer finalist in 2021 from UK Youth. So that's a little bit of background about us. My name's James, I'm the centre manager at Soapbox. Peabody has probably been the most impactful funder that we've had in this period. Really, we've been funded historically by them as a charity, but we were starting from ground zero when COVID struck. And in that period, we've had support through three pieces of work: young leaders, young ambassadors, and Peabody, I believe, have given us their largest single fund that they've given to any one organisation in one go through the London Community Foundation Wave 5 Fund. This is all sort of prefaced by the fact that Peabody have been hugely important in the development of our work in this period. And what has that involved? So our young leaders work has involved 4 strands of work, although it's involved slightly more because, as you can imagine, not everything went immediately according to plan. So we had to kind of learn on the fly a little bit. Some of the initial pieces of work we weren't able to focus on, but these were the final 4 pieces of work that were done, which was a project around young women called No Ceilings, the development of our YouTube channel, Soapbox Live, which is our weekly live music event, which took place historically in the building and has now been online and is now going back to a sort of hybrid approach. And then finally, Homeless Hampers. I'm not going to kind of dwell unduly about those pieces of work, but happy to answer any questions if anybody's got any specific questions about what we did with that. But looking at the learning that came out of this from a young person's perspective, and this is all against the backdrop of doing all of our work online, the craziest and maddest time that I've ever experienced in my lifetime, never mind as a youth worker. One of the things that it gave us really, and this was very, very important, was it brought young people together. And that actually can't be sort of overstated in terms of its importance. I think one of the other things that we took away was it gave each young person the opportunity on at least one aspect of their project. So it wasn't just about 3 people leading on a project and then 4 people sitting in the background. Actually, it was designed, and we worked with young people to kind of identify the individual opportunities that existed for them to lead on various different parts of the project. And I think they felt very positive about that. As you can imagine, it has been an irregular and a lack of it's been an irregular time that's lacked consistency. So actually, one of the things, again, the feedback that we had from young people is they really benefited from having set sessions on this and the consistent approach that they were able to adopt with it. So that was really important. And then there's something for the youth workers in the room about youth work process and product. It's not just about the journey. It's all 4 pieces of work had end product attached to them. And I think that that's something that we've learned hugely when you're working with young people. It's not just about the journey. It's not just about the journey, and it's not just about the product. It's the where high quality youth work takes place. It actually takes place where both of those 2 things are combined. And that kind of that was definitely something that came out of this, and it has really cemented our approach going forward. But I do also want to talk about the difference that it's made to us as an organisation, all of this work. So Soapbox Live historically was in the building. We put it on Instagram and had about probably 300 to 500 views per weekly activity and weekly session that we had. We moved it onto YouTube, and it's now had 2,600 views. So it's 5 times more viewed, this version of it. So this will definitely be, it's showcased to us actually the ability that we had to put it on this new channel and for it to be effective. The YouTube development work that kind of coincides with that has seen us develop from really ground zero. And we're not YouTubers, you know, I am not Jake Paul for many, many, many reasons. But we now have over 2,000 subscribers and over 230,000 views of content. Now, that's not great from a YouTube perspective, but if you look at other ways that the sector is using YouTube, we are, I think, one of the success stories of this period, I think, in terms of how we've used it as a platform. I think another thing that this was really important to, and it really challenged a number of things that Peabody have challenged us to do, both in person and kind of just through the work. And really they challenged us to make sure that we had a youth-led template for the work that we do, and particularly online. And that's been incredibly useful for us. And I think it will be something that we definitely adopt going forward. And I think it was interesting, I was just speaking to a member of staff about kind of what her takeaway was from the young women's work, and this actually resonated with everybody else. It enabled the charity, this piece of work enabled the charity to respond directly to the needs and interests of young people. So this wasn't us telling us what we wanted them to do, it was them telling us and then us helping them to facilitate that. So, on to Jordan.
Hello, everyone. So I'm from Loud Futures. I've been leading on the Young Ambassadors program. So if you don't know, it leads on 2 segments. So it's first training program, which was held and taught by Steve and Sophie from the Peabody side of stuff. Through that program, there was kind of a leadership program where the young people kind of learned, kind of building on their skills. What we found out of the projects, we split them into 3. So the 3 projects that we were able to come up with was a music boot camp, a peer-to-peer mentoring program, and a VR youth employment hub, which was created by young people within Soapbox. Can you go to the next slide, James? So some of the things that we were able to take away from the whole project is that, one, they were able to build a lot of leadership skills. Another thing was encouraging group engagement. What we found was within the beginning, they weren't necessarily as much engaged as in switching on cameras, interacting with each other. That progressed throughout the program. It improves a lot of personal development skills, which I feel young people need to build directly within themselves and then within their peers. And then for us as an organization, or as 2 organizations, it enabled us to actually develop an internal ecosystem of forward-thinking individuals, where the projects and everything that came within the projects was created by the young people and guided by us, as opposed to us kind of putting ideas within the young people's minds. Keep me on to the next slide, James.
I think I slipped one, Jordan.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah. So just a bit of reflection about the project and how much of a positive influence it had been. So for those that know, it was a 10K pot of funding, which is an amazing opportunity for, a lot of opportunities for young people out there, but for them to actually get the experience to be able to pitch to a panel, which is, real life situation, and then to be able to have to plan for the project and split it down and have actual literal money to break down and learn. So it helped them to develop certain skills, for them to actually be able to go out and have their own youth-led partnerships representing the organizations that we hold. So such as an organization called Shadow to Shine that helped on the peer-to-peer mentoring program, and also getting in contact with labels like Sony and others to obviously bring in people for the music boot camp. It also encouraged a lot of independent learning, which was a bonus for us, for getting young people to not just engage within the sessions that were put weekly for us, but then when they've started to then create their own hubs and groups and meeting outside of the sessions to get the independent learning to put in the extra hours. And then it also enhanced youth knowledge on money management and budgeting, which is a vital thing for young people to be able to understand how to manage their money and budget things and projects and run a business. This is some of the feedback we had from some of the individuals who have been involved in Soapbox for a very long time and have been on the process of going through. We're at the stage where we're still at the planning stage, and over the next 3 to 4 weeks, they will be hosting their project. So we'll have the music boot camp at the end of August. We'll also have the VR sessions will be going. They will be having some tutoring sessions within the VR spaces. And then we have the mentoring program where the young people have gone through the mentoring program. The peer-to-peer mentoring program was split into 2 parts. So it was a mentoring program where 3 individuals, young ladies, actually went with Shadow to Shine and learned how to be peer-to-peer mentors. And the second part of that segment was they would then contacting brands within the digital agencies to create tips and trick videos, which will then be put on our Soapbox YouTube platform to then be posted out and promoted to young people.
And then just some final reflections about the support that we've had from Peabody. It's transformed the breadth and scope of our work. We're a very different organisation as we're emerging into whatever comes next. I don't like the idea of going back to normal, because that suggests that what went before for the young people that we work with was any good. And I think for lots of young people that won't be the case. So we're very much forward thinking. So I think it's definitely transformed what happens next for us. I think, as we kind of alluded to before, against this backdrop of concern and uncertainty, Peabody as an organisation have offered us and young people a consistent level of support and encouragement. And I would encourage everybody that's thinking about applying. Peabody have been one of the most responsive funders. You know, I've done this for 20 years. It's been very rare to have had the level of support and engagement and commitment from a funder. Frequently you get the money and you don't hear from them until they want the report. That has not been the case with Peabody. It's not been overbearing, but actually the support that's been on offer has been you know, of the very highest order. I think, as I mentioned before, it's challenged us as a charity to focus on how do we, in this online environment and what becomes a hybrid environment, how do we make sure that young people are absolutely the front and centre of what we do. I think too little of that has been done over the course of the last 18 months. And I think crucially for this, I think has been the case with the Lambeth project, by the sound of things, the additional funding that they've got, it's enabled us to set up work and young people to set up work that will go far beyond the lifespan of this project. And I think that that's whatever whenever you're doing something, if you can say actually that it's not just lasted for a set period of time, but actually it's going to continue to grow and develop. I think that's really important. So that's us. And that's that.
Thank you so much, James and Jordan. It's really great hearing from an organization's perspective of, you know, how the funding impacted their work. And I suppose as well, the impact it's had on the young people as well. So now we've set the scene with the information about the fund and people's experience of the program design and delivery by young people. It's now time to kind of head into the specifics and hear about how to apply. So I'm going to hand over to Harriet from LCF.
Great, thanks, Keem. Sorry, I couldn't do my mute then. Faith, please can we share the slides? So first of all, just want to say before the slides come up, just good evening, everyone. It's really brilliant to see so many people here today. And I just want to thank Akeem for hosting, Soapbox for sharing their work and experiences, which were really insightful, and also our partners at Peabody for organising today's event. So I think I can't quite see my slide yet. So just a bit of an intro. My name's Harriet. I'm a programme manager at the London Community Foundation, and we, if you've not heard of us, we partner with public, private and third sector bodies to make funding available for community organisations. So last year we awarded over £22.5 million through over 1,300 grants. can't quite see my slides yet. I think we're having some technical issues, so sorry about that.
Okay, we are. I'm just going to take over the slides. Faith's computer's decided today is the perfect time to freeze.
It's always the way.
Yeah, so just give me 1 second and we'll get them up.
Thank you. So I am the main contact at LCF for the Young People's Fund. Today I will be giving an overview of the fund criteria, the process, some top tips when writing your funding application if you do meet the eligibility criteria and have a project that fits the fund criteria. So we'll be going over that. And I do welcome questions at the end of the presentation. So as I'm going through the presentation, if you have anything, just note it down and there'll be an opportunity to ask afterwards. We will stop recording for the Q&A section, as we said before, but I do welcome people to ask, or if you don't feel comfortable, my email address will be on the screen at the end. So please do just drop me an email and I'll happily respond to your email when possible. Perfect. So yeah, so who can apply? So I've done it quite annoyingly for someone else who's having to share the screen. But we'll first of all start with the eligibility criteria. So I want to really emphasise that in order to be eligible for funding, you first must meet this criteria. So to briefly go through it, so your organisation must be one of the following legal structures. So either a constituted community or resident group, a registered charity, a company limited by guarantee without shareholders, a community interest company limited by guarantee, or a charitable incorporated organisation. You must have an income of around £500,000 or under, have a minimum of 3 unrelated management committee members, that might be trustees or directors, have a signed governing document, have a bank account in the name of your group with at least 2 unrelated signatories, and have annual accounts, or for smaller groups, an income and expenditure sheet. Have proof or public liability insurance, and your liabilities are not higher than your assets for 2 years in a row. And you must have a children and young people safeguarding policy, as obviously this is the Young People's Fund. Next slide, please. Perfect. Okay, so before applying for the grant, please carefully check that your project meets all the fund criteria, as we'll be assessing your application against this specific fund criteria. Your project must address violence affecting young people through one or more of the following ways. The project must work with young people already affected by youth violence or criminal lifestyles, or deliver preventative work, or address the root causes which lead to young people being affected by violence. 25% of the project's beneficiaries must be Peabody residents and 50% must be social housing residents. Projects must be delivered in either Lambeth, Hackney, Waltham Forest, Westminster or Southwark. And your organisation must demonstrate in your grant application that you've involved, affected or interested young people in the design and delivery of the project. And as we said before, we'll be using the public participation framework to gauge the level of young people's involvement. For example, consulting with young people to design the project would be considered to be at the consult stage, while giving young people the power to make decisions on the design and creation of projects would be considered to be at the empower stage. Applications that fall in the involve, collaborate and empower stages will be prioritised over applications that fall into the consult stage. Applications that fall into the inform stage will not be considered at all. Your organisation must be clearly embedded in your community, and you must be able to demonstrate how you're making a real impact in the community you're working in. As a final piece, organisation delivering projects with the following outcomes will be prioritised. And there's 3 areas. So the first is developing the personal and professional skills of young people, contributing to community cohesion, or improving mental and physical well-being. On to the next slide, please. So for round 2, there's over £123,000 available, and you need to apply for grants of between £3,000 and £10,000. So this will be allocated across the priority boroughs, which are at the bottom of the screen. And priority will be given to projects working with young people living and around the following wards, as you can see on the bottom of the screen. And there's a copy on the fund guidelines, so you have more time to go through these after the presentation. Next slide, please. So the decision-making process. So you now have until Friday, the 3rd of September at 5 p.m. to make your funding application. So please do make sure that you're leaving sufficient time to read through all the fund criteria, the online guidance, and actually making the application. So we will be conducting a shortlisting process, and applicants will be notified by the 17th of September. And that's whether you've been shortlisted or you haven't made the shortlisting stage. So we'll be carrying out due diligence, which means that you're required to provide a digital copy of your organisation's documents. So please make sure that you have these ready with your application. And that is a signed governing document, your trustees and directors' names and addresses, your annual accounts, your safeguarding policy, and proof of public liability insurance. And as we said before, shortlisted applicants will be contacted about the details of the panel. And the panel meeting will be held on Saturday, the 30th of October. So make sure that you are keeping that date free in your diary. And moving on to the panel. So as we've said before, the panel is made up of local young people. They are the ones making the funding decisions. So a staff member and up to 3 young people who are involved in the design of the project will be invited to attend. It's most likely that they'll be presenting virtually to the panel. So if you do have any accessibility requirements, please do let us know before the presentation and we'll try and make sure we meet these. Young people from your organisation will be offered 5 minutes to present to the panel of young people, and it's about the project and their involvement in developing or running it. And as we said before, just to re-emphasise that the panel will be held on Saturday the 30th of October. Moving on. Next slide, please. I might have a bit of a delay on my screen. Perfect. So just a few key points, and this sounds very obvious, but it's just something I really want to kind of make really clear. So we've put a lot of kind of effort into making sure that the fund guidelines and the online application form guidance have as much information in as possible. So please do read through these really carefully. If you have any issues with accessibility, you can't read the text, just let me know and we can send you through another size with bigger font. And please do tell us about your organisation and how the organisation and the project are youth-led. And as we said before, please do refer to the public participation framework. If appropriate, please make sure that you pay your young people for their time. Please do save your application as you go along, and you may also want to save your application to a Word document just to be extra safe. Next point. So to give some top tips on a good funding application. So these are just points that we will be looking for when we read through your application. So we'll be looking for a clear fund fit. So that's not just a strong project or service. We really want to make sure that you meet this specific fund criteria. Make sure that you're giving suitable proposed outcomes. So sometimes less is more. And by this, I mean, rather than saying you're going to meet 20,000 beneficiaries, if you're really working with 20 young people to a really high level and meeting them often, then sometimes that would be considered a more effective application. Please be specific in giving your project details. So we'll be looking at the what, when, how often and where. Demonstrate you have a clear project structure. So looking at the format of your sessions or activities, and that you have in place the appropriate experience to deliver it. We'll be looking at the evidence of needs, the gap, demand in the area. And also, as we said before, as Soapbox covered, their kind of sustainability, the fact that after the grant lifetime, they've gone on to deliver the services and it's actually been more impactful for the organisation. We'll be looking at your budget, so please do make that as clear as possible and making sure that it is appropriate. We're looking at just the breakdown of spends, making sure they add up, and staff hourly wage. And on that note, making sure that the staff are paid a real living wage, and at the minute that is £10.85 per hour in London. If you need to secure other funding, what stage are you at with that? And also looking at your monitoring procedure, because evaluation is really important. There's help available via our resources page, via our website, and just looking at some of the reasons why evaluation is so important and should be for your organisation. It's great for your strategy, making sure your services are really effective, helping you access further funding, communicating to your community or beneficiaries or wider society, motivating your staff and volunteers, and being accountable to your donors and what you're actually spending the funding on. Moving on, please. So here's the timeline for round 2. So as I said before, the closing date and time is Friday the 3rd of September at 5 p.m. Shortlisted groups will be contacted by the 17th of September. The panel meeting is on the 30th of October. Decisions will be released by Monday, the 8th of November. So we'll be expecting your project to begin around mid-November. And then they obviously last a year from there, so until next November. And then you'll have a month to report back on your outputs and outcomes to us. Next slide. So if you think you meet the fund criteria or wish to find out more, read it after the presentation, please do visit the Young People's Fund webpage. As I said before, there's the fund criteria, there's online guidance, and actually the application button. So if you click on that, then you'll go up to the online version and you put in your email address, press submit, and a form will be emailed to you. Great, so moving on. So if you have any questions, this is your opportunity to ask. My email address is on the screen. And before I do ask any questions, I recommend going to our homepage. So that's London Community Foundation homepage. Scroll down to the bottom on the right-hand side, you can sign up to our e-newsletter where we send monthly funding updates and just, find out a bit more about our work. And on that note, if anyone does have any questions.
And then what we'll do right now is I'll stop sharing the screen. As mentioned, we'll send around these slides, so you'll get a copy of Harriet's email address and some other contacts if you haven't had a chance to jot that down. We'll also stop the recording now, so that way you guys can feel free to ask any questions without having to worry about it being recorded.